So, as I'm sure some of you may know by now, it felt like I was pretty much the only person on the internet who came out saying they hated 28 Years Later. I thought that movie was an abomination after all of the years we all waited for it. And I will say, going into the Bone Temple, I wasn't expecting a whole lot. I think that trailer looked abysmal. I saw it so many times and I laughed every time, like, what the hell are we doing with this franchise? But after watching it, it begs the question, did I hate it as much as the first movie, or did they somehow manage to reel me back in? And now I'm kind of looking forward to the conclusion. So 28 years later, The Bone Temple is the second installment of this trilogy, following up on where the first film, 28 years later, concluded with Spike and the Jimmy Gang, or the Teletubby Gang, the Power Rangers, whatever you want to call them. And this movie is going to pick up where the first movie left off. We're hanging out with Spike and the Jimmy Gang, and they have become the real villains of the apocalypse now, not so much the Rage Virus. But this movie is kind of broken up into two parts. You have the story of Spike and them, and then you have the story of Ralph Fiennes' character, that weird memento mori doctor who stacks skulls to the sky and nobody questioned it. And this movie is going to try to bridge the gap between those two storylines and see if it can make it work, which is kind of the same issue I had with the first movie. You had the father and the son, the mother and the son, you had the guy collecting skulls, you have the Jimmy Gang at the end. It felt like it was like a prequel of 5 different proposed parts of this trilogy at the same time. None of them fleshed out yet, which made the pacing of the first film all over the place for me. I was a big fan of the first half of that. The second half, I thought it fell off a cliff when you get to the mother and the son. I don't think this movie struggles as much as that movie did because it's more committed to the bit than that first movie was. It feels like they were kind of testing the water. This movie is just so balls deep asinine that I feel like eventually you will buy into it. Now, with the Jimmy Gang being the main villains of this movie, the whole thing kind of reminded me of The Walking Dead. Not the early seasons, again, because there's not a lot of viruses or zombies or whatever you want to call them in these movies at this point, but more so the later seasons of The Walking Dead when you have the gang show up to these small towns like Terminus and it's just corrupt leadership. You know, at this point, the humans are the bad guys. That's how this movie feels. Like we're exploring the post-apocalyptic thing of what would happen very, very far down the rabbit hole here when it's almost like the zombies are an afterthought. Just the worst of the worst, most cynical humans have gotten control of power. So nothing super original you haven't seen before probably, although I think this is a better example of it than a lot of the movies that have tried to do it. It is interesting to watch as an audience member what these characters are doing in the movie because you as an audience member kind of know what's going on. You know the people leading things are kind of fucked. The way they're handling things, the way they're behaving is not okay, but the characters in the movie are seemingly not really into that yet. When you're dealing with the Jimmy Gang side of the story, this movie surprised me because I was not anticipating how graphic and gory this movie was going to be. It goes there at points, and I was not expecting that. After the first installment, this kind of won me back, and I was like, okay, now we're doing shit. So you have that half of the story when you have Spike navigating this gang that is like torturing and killing people, and they have consumed power. The other side of the story, you have Ralph Fiennes' character as this weird memento mori doctor who's trying to understand and figure out if there is still humanity behind the eyes of these infected. He's trying to investigate all of that because he has somehow not given up after all of these years on the humanity aspect of what's inside all of us. And what I think this movie does a lot better than the last installment is it feels like it leans into its silliness. It commits to the bit to the point this movie has an overarching like dark humor morbidity to it where you're watching it and eventually you're going to be like, fuck, that is so messed up, but you're going to start laughing. My theater was laughing because it just gets to be so ridiculous at a certain point. You find yourself getting immersed into this world, and I don't think the first movie got to that point. And probably the biggest issue I had with 28 Years Later was the fandom behind it. People kept on saying you just don't understand it. You're an American, so you can't possibly understand these themes. I get it. I researched it. I was told 100 times. I just don't think the movie worked tonally. Whereas I think this movie succeeds because it is so ridiculous. You know exactly what it's going to be going into it based on how the first movie ended. It's not constantly at war with itself, trying to prove its own existence like the first movie, which felt like it was juggling 20 things at once. So as one of the people who did not like 28 Years Later, somebody who expected to hate Bone Temple, I was kind of pleasantly surprised with this movie. I had a pretty good time with it and I laughed a good bit. I definitely have to sit and think on it or maybe watch it a second time, but it might be my second favorite in the 28 franchise because it is so oddly unique compared to the other movies. At a certain point, I was just bought into it. So like, comment, subscribe, hype the video, comment down below. Let me know what you think of the Bone Temple if you check it out, and let me know if you liked 28 Years Later or if you were like me and you just hated that film. Other than that, I will see you in the next review. Peace.